So tonight's guest is James Lance. And I know Dwayne has already given quite the lead in to James. He's been on the show once before. He's a director, filmmaker, playwright who had a show, I believe, called The Bus that ran off Broadway and was a big hit. And he's also got a series called Angry Gay Grandpa, which you'll have to find out about from James tonight. So let's get into that interview, right, Dwayne?
Let's see it.
We first met filmmaker James Lance 2 years ago when he appeared on our show to promote his documentary, Bright Green Nothing, the story of how a Vermont farmer who produced T-shirts proclaiming, "Eat more kale," was sued by Chick-fil-A for copyright infringement. It was a long, drawn-out process that the Vermonter eventually won. James is currently working on a new project, Angry Gay Grandpa, a series of stories about the suicides of trans youth in today's anti-trans culture. Let's take a look.
Can I be angry for a moment? Last year in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in less than 1 year, 3 trans teens died by suicide. They were Braden Snyder, who was just 17 years old, Taya Cassidy, who was 18, and River Olmsted, who was 17 years old. This is a profound tragedy, and I can only begin to imagine the depth of pain and loss that was brought to these families and to this community. But what really pisses me off is an even greater tragedy is occurring in that these 3 teen suicides have been largely ignored. Now, if a gunman had done this and killed 3 teens, it would be considered a mass shooting, and it would make national news. There'd be prayer vigils, lighted candles, piles of flowers and notes, and a massive manhunt would be underway to find the killer. But none of these things happened. Instead, something else that commonly happens in mass shootings occurred.
Possible active shooter at the top.
After every mass shooting,
there's still shots being fired.
We hear a common refrain.
People with mental illness are getting guns.
Our inability to deal with mental illness.
Mental illness and hatred pulls the trigger.
In her eulogy for River Olmsted, Sister Dottie Almany, St. Peter's Lutheran Church in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, said River's suicide was due to something oddly familiar.
And River's enemy was mental illness.
In an email response to my question of whether her claim of mental illness as the reason for River's death was an attempt to tamp down the controversy over River's gender identification, Sister Dottie emailed me this. I have known River since she was very young and know the struggle she has had with mental illness, so my remarks in my sermon were not an attempt to cover up her gender identity. Sister Dottie, I'm so sorry, but I don't think I believe you.
Wow. James Lance, come back in.
Hi, Amber. How you doing?
Fine, James. So good to have you back. All right. First of all, why Angry Gay Grandpa?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you so much for having me. I'm really quite honored, and you're looking quite fetching tonight. And why Angry Gay? Why Angry Gay Grandpa? Well, I guess. Well, first of all, it's a title that my sons recommended. The angry part is that my job, my goal is to evoke anger from the audience, is to evoke anger from the people who become aware of this story. This is an absolute tragedy that is happening across the country. A lot of LGBTQ youth are feeling so impacted by the wave of anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ rhetoric and legislation that has come out of Washington the last couple of years. 500 legislations last year, almost 500 this year, and it's having an impact. I think we saw recently Next Benedict in Oklahoma, a young trans person who died by suicide. That was obviously something that came out of the anti-trans rhetoric. When Lancaster, the story that I've been following, it's not one teen, but now we're up to, actually, as of today, 5 young people who have killed themselves over less than an 18-month period. And that's just unacceptable. And I don't want to be so angry so much. I want to offload that onto the audience. I want the audience to feel the anger that I'm feeling, because this is not right. There's something really, really wrong with this. And I really want to get this message out there. Also, too, it's I'm a grandpa, and I'm recently, well, not recently, my granddaughter is almost 6 years old now. And I came out as gay 2 years ago at National Coming Out Day. So it kind of all works. Angry gay grandpa. So nice alliteration too.
For the past year and a half, we've been highlighting some of the anti-trans, anti-gay legislation that's been going on in the country by talking to state representatives and state senators and drag and trans victims of hate in their states. Why? Why is this going on?
Well, I'm not, I want to be clear and honest. I'm not an expert on the political dynamics that's happening around the country. I'm really not. All that I'm keenly aware of is that in red and rural states, red states mostly, GOP, Republican, conservative politicians are pushing an agenda out there that is very anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ. As I understand it, when gay marriage became national law, it was okay for everybody to get married. As I understand it, Republicans were looking for another wedge issue, and this became a really potent and mean-spirited wedge issue that their constituency responded to. And so in state houses across the country, just like what we're seeing in Lancaster, state legislators are pushing these bills out there. And some of them are so cruel and so mean. And it's getting down to the youth. It's basically what's happening is it's licensing bigotry. It's licensing anti-trans rhetoric. And kids are suffering in schools. They're being bullied. And they're feeling completely oppressed. The Trevor Project. Are you familiar with the Trevor Project?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
The Trevor Project recently put out statistics on the harm that is being done to LGBTQ youth. And it's really quite extraordinary. 41% of all LGBTQ youth seriously considered attempting suicide in the last year. 41%. Think about that. That's extraordinary. And then 14%, this is also extraordinary, 14% of all LGBTQ youth actually attempted suicide. And unfortunately, some of those youth are succeeding. And I just find this to be absolutely 100% unacceptable. And it pisses me off. and I want to do something about it. I feel like that there's something that I can do about it. I want to do about it. I'm so proud of my state of Vermont, and in a bunch of different ways. But my son, who is also queer, when he was going through the coming out process, the extraordinary organization here called Outright Vermont really protected him and made that transition for him into adulthood really so much easier. And overall, our state has been so accepting, so welcoming, and helpful to him in so many ways. Well, that's not the case in all states, and especially in red and rural states. A lot of them red and rural states, which is very similar to the upbringing that I had and the background that I have. So that also makes me doubly impassioned about this, is that I feel like I know where I came from, which was from a conservative Christian religious background in a rural, red and rural state. And I know the impact that it had on me. And I know the impact that it's having. I feel certain I know the impact that it's having on kids today. And it's unacceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable. Any kid's suicide is unacceptable. But that it is being caused and is preventable because politicians are using it as a wedge issue. I find it completely unacceptable. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, that's fine. I love your soapbox. All right. Angry Gay Grandpa is a series of episodes. Tell us about the episodes.
Well, basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to find a place to create in public. It's kind of a newer kind of idea. Is that in the past, somebody like me, a documentary filmmaker, might take all my footage and take all of the story and just and work on it behind closed doors and not let anybody know about it. I know you're familiar with the Bright Green Nothing movie. That took 10 years, and I was behind closed doors, and I was working on that, a lot. And people thought, well, nothing was happening, but actually a lot was happening. This is kind of different. I've become aware of this story. I think it's an incredible story. Lancaster is an incredible place. It's rich with so much activity that's going on, and I want to create a story out of it. And so the Angry Gay Grandpa series is basically a chapter by chapter series of the process of creating whatever this is going to be, whether it's going to be a documentary, a commercial, a narrative film, and it's right there. And I have to say I'm not entirely comfortable with the process, because this TikTokization of being in front of the camera. I'm much more comfortable being behind the camera, but being in front of the camera is something I'm not entirely comfortable with. But it is the way that we're telling stories these days, and it's the way that I've started telling this story. So I've done 4 chapters so far. The first chapter covered the first 3 suicides of the young people. The second chapter was a little bit more personal. The third chapter started to connect it with the GOP, the conservatives, and a little bit made an analogy with film. Each one of the episodes, I try to make an analogy with movies, because I'm a filmmaker and I love film. And the fourth chapter, the last one, is the longest and covers the latest young man that committed suicide, a trans man by the name of Ashton Clatterbuck, who was just an extraordinary young man. I went to his memorial service and was very moved by the outpouring of love and loss that this community felt. And it's a loss that is not just being suffered by this family and this community. It's a loss that all of us are feeling. Absolutely all of us should feel deeply. This was an extraordinary young man who was politically active, and it's just a loss. It's a profound loss. And I'm at a loss for words at how to convey the importance of us knowing that story and getting angry, because in my mind, that came out of, in some fashion, the politicization of kids, of trans youth, of LGBTQ youth, had an impact on this young person, as it did on all of these young people. And I find it absolutely unacceptable, and I want to do something about it. Anyway, that's so far as the 4 chapters.
And you are, James. We're going to take a short break, but we're going to talk about how people can help you in your cause and another thing that's happening in your life as well. We'll be right back.
Okay. Thank you.
Wow. Wasn't part 1 incredible? James is such an integral part of the community and conveying such an important message through his writing, his playwriting, his directing, and most crucially, the films. I can't wait for part 2. But hey, let's bring Russell back in.
Hey, Dwayne, you are so correct. What a great interview. And James is just a wonderful person. He really is. So I talked about the bustiers earlier. They help us out. And the other thing that helps us out is our store. And you can find the AmberLive store at amberlive.tv. And we have incredible products, including this Consider a Career in Hardcore Pornography mug, along with lots of other designs and lots of other products, all available at AmberLive TV. So if you get a good giggle out of that, or if you want to go in, there's lots of LGBTQ themed products. There's the whole Vintage Confidential collection. Rocco has a collection. Rusty Peen has a collection. Amber has a collection. There's so much there. There's like 150 different products. So go check out the AmberLive store. Show your support for AmberLive and help keep us going. And now,
if you don't want a mug, they're on T-shirts and tote bags. Show your love for Amber and show the public you support Amber, and people go like, hey, where'd you get that? I've never seen that before, because this is the only place you can get these items. So, snag a t-shirt, snag a tote bag.
Yes. And now let's get back to that incredible interview, part 2.
If this sign makes you as anxious as it does me, I can help you. You can be a part of making a commercial against what this sign represents and for trans and queer youth. Donate to purchase a portion of a single second of production time for a 30-second commercial to support LGBTQ youth during the upcoming election. Our youth have been seriously harmed by anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ legislation sweeping the U.S. In fact, the Washington Post just reported that in states with restrictive anti-LGBTQ laws, hate crimes in schools have quadrupled and are rising even higher. Calls to LGBTQ lines have doubled, with anti-LGBTQ laws and rhetoric named as the new #1 call for help.
On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care. I will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth.
Donate at GoFundMe, where your donation can be anonymous, and we've set up a 501c4 social welfare nonprofit to make this commercial. But we have to hurry. This is an emergency, and the future of LGBTQ youth depends on you, and not on this.
So welcome back, James. So tell me about that. What do you hope to accomplish with that campaign?
Well, the part of the whole effort with all of this has been to get things out before the election. I'd love to be able, and I'd love to be able to, we are going to get a 30-second commercial out prior to the election to run. And I'm pretty sure now Pennsylvania is going to be our state. Pennsylvania is a swing state. And so I want to get a commercial, whether that commercial is based on this story that I'm working on now or a dramatic narrative. Time will tell and budget will tell, because one is a lot less expensive to produce than the other. But the goal is to get it out there and to target a specific swing state. And right now it looks like Pennsylvania is that state.
Okay, the campaign is for production of the commercial. What about airing the commercial?
Well, originally, I went to GoFundMe, and originally I had a $250,000 budget, thinking that about $30,000 or $40,000 might go to the production of it, and then the other $200,000+ would go running it in a specific market. But we didn't get much response from GoFundMe. And fundraising, crowdfunding is always hard. It always is. Right. But that $250,000 figure, I think, was so off-putting to people that they may not have even wanted to donate at all. So my goal right now is let's just make enough. Let's just get enough in there so I can make the commercial, make the spot, and then we'll try to get to the next leap of getting it broadcast and raising the money for that, going to individuals and organizations who are pumping money into a state. And there is a lot of money out there that is angling for these specific swing states. Right now, there's a lot of electoral uncertainty out there. We don't know exactly what the landscape is going to look like, but the last 3 to 4 months, boy, it's going to be a horse race. And I'd like to have our tiny little commercial or whatever it is out there and part of that horse race, because again, I feel like that this is a subject that I'm really passionate about and feel like we've got to do everything we can, because if that other guy gets in there, if we see that buffoon of a president get in there again, which I can't believe, it's hard for me to believe that a third of the country thinks that this is a good idea. But if he gets in there again, it is just going to be tragic for our democracy, for our country, and really super tragic for LGBTQ youth and trans teens. It's just, and so, boy, I feel like it's an all hands on deck moment where that everybody needs to be in the game, and that's what I'm trying here. And so far, we're not doing awful. we've raised about $5,600, I think, is what the last total was, and so I'm really grateful to the 46 people who have donated so far. But we've got a long ways yet to go. It's still, another $25,000 to raise, 30,000. Which, it's always a slog. I've been doing this for, Amber, you would know, for close to 25 years. And every time it's hard, and every time it's a slog. And so it happens one person at a time. And there are some things that have changed with crowdfunding in the last few years. The news media doesn't like running stories about crowdfunding anymore, so it's been hard to get any kind of media attention. But we'll see. I'll keep plugging and chugging at it.
Well, James, while you're plugging and chugging at this for the cause, you also have a personal battle going as well. Share with us about that.
Well, about 5 years ago, right before the art hop, I started getting this pain in my back. And I went and had it checked out, and one thing led to another and another and another. And come to find out, I had a tumor in my spine, or right off my spine. And it was called a malignant peripheral nerve sheath tumor, which actually arose out of testicular cancer that I had almost 35 years ago when I was in my 20s. And at that time, I had the cancer removed, and they gave me radiation treatment. Radiation treatment caused this new cancer, and it's a rare cancer. It's a pretty deadly one. I think there are, like, the statistics are, there's literally like less than 100 people get it a year, and or something like it. It's really rare, and the survival rate also too is really low. It's like 23% survival rate for a 5-year period. I just crossed over my 5 years, so that's a good thing. It's stage 4, so that's not a good thing. It means it's gravitated to other places in my body, my lungs and whatnot. But it's not being aggressive. It's my oncologist says it's being nice. So I'll take that as a cancer, I'll take that. And while it's doing its thing, I'm going to be out there doing my thing and fighting the good fight. And if anything, to be honest with you, Amber, the cancer has ignited me somewhat, because, if we all know the clock is ticking, but for me, the clock is ticking especially loud, if you will. And I feel like, gosh, I've got I'm in the last quarter here, and I've really got to work hard to make some things happen, because there are some things I want to have happen before they draw the final curtain. So, and one of those is getting out there and making a project that will help suicidal youth. Can I tell you a quick story?
Please.
Years ago, when I first started out, I was a high school teacher, and I taught in a really rural community just outside of Appalachia in Virginia, and it was a great community. I loved it. Very rural people, but they had lots of problems, like all rural communities do, and one of the problems they had was alcoholism, and I had a student whose parents were alcoholic, and he was very much suicidal at the time. And he would come into my class, and he had this awful bruise, often right in the center of his forehead. And I would say, what happened there? What happened to you? And he said, I was hitting myself with a hammer, hoping that I could kill myself. Well, it was my first year teaching. I was just beside myself, and I went to the guidance department and said, look, this kid is suicidal, and you look at his head, and he's just depressed, and oh my gosh, we got to do something for this kid. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of support for kids in that area, and students at schools like this kid was. He didn't get help from the school. The school thought, well, that's not our problem. That's social services, or that's. And so I made a pact with myself. I said, well, if this kid kills himself, I am going to commit the rest of my life to doing all I can do to help suicidal teens, helping suicidal kids. Well, somehow, by the grace of God, this kid didn't kill himself and slowly made it, from being a sophomore to a junior and finally graduated. And that was certainly warmed my heart. So I didn't have to dedicate my life to suicide prevention. But at this end of my life, at this late quarter, I feel like, okay, I can bring that back out and bring that promise back out, and I can do something here. This is something that I can actually do. And I really do believe in my heart of hearts, it's something that I can do and that all of us can do. We know that politicians respond to pressure, especially media pressure, especially pressure from the public. And I believe that things that we do on this box, that things that we do on social media, things that we do in getting these stories out can move people. And I am so, so desperate to move people on this story. Just since I've been working on this story, there have been 2 kids in Lancaster who have killed themselves. And I feel like, man, is the time is ticking here, and we've got to do this, and we've got to do it in a hurry to prevent any more trans suicides. Anyway, there I am on my soapbox again.
James, thank you so much. Our best thoughts are with you on your project and your health. We hope there's many more years and many more projects that you take on, because you're a good person, James. Thank you.
But thank you so much, Amber, and good luck with your show here. Man, it sounds like you've just crossed a big threshold too, not that long ago. So
we're up to about 200 episodes. Yeah.
Wow, awesome. Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you very much, James.